April 3rd, 1972, Highway 95, between Los Angeles and Las Vegas, 6:47 p.m. Dean Martin was driving to Vegas, a show at the Sands, opening night of a 2-week residency. He was alone, preferred driving himself sometimes, gave him time to think, to decompress, to be away from managers and handlers and people wanting things from him. The highway was mostly empty, late afternoon, golden hour. The desert stretched out on both sides, beautiful in its desolation. Dean had driven this route hundreds of times, knew every mile, every exit, every curve. He was listening to the radio, Frank's new album, singing along quietly, relaxed, in no hurry, enjoying the drive. About 20 miles outside of Vegas, Dean noticed something ahead. Brake lights, sudden, multiple cars swerving. Something was wrong. Dean slowed down, cautious. As he got closer, he saw it. An accident. Bad. A sedan had flipped, was upside down in the median, completely mangled. Steam rising from the engine, glass everywhere. Another car was sideways across 2 lanes, front end crushed, hood crumpled like paper. Traffic was stopping. People were getting out of their cars, running toward the wreckage. Dean pulled over, onto the shoulder, put his car in park, got out. The scene was chaos, people shouting, someone screaming, the smell of gasoline heavy in the air. Dean ran toward the flipped sedan. Others were already there, trying to help. The car was destroyed, completely. The roof crushed inward, windows shattered. A man was trapped inside, upside down, still strapped in his seatbelt. Unconscious, blood running down his face, pooling on the ceiling beneath him. Dean knelt down, looked inside. The man wasn't moving, wasn't responding. Someone next to Dean was trying to reach him, trying to unbuckle the seatbelt. "Get him out." "We need to get him out," the person said. His voice panicked. "Before it catches fire." Dean helped, reached in through the broken window, his hands getting cut on the glass. He didn't notice, didn't care. They managed to unbuckle the seatbelt. The man fell, limp, heavy. They pulled him out, gently as they could, laid him on the ground, away from the wreckage. Someone was doing CPR, pumping his chest, breathing into his mouth. But Dean could see, could tell. The man was gone. His eyes were open, but empty, staring at nothing. His chest wasn't moving. The person doing CPR kept trying, desperate, refusing to accept it. But Dean knew. He'd seen death before, in the war, in hospitals visiting friends, in the mirror every day since his son died. No, wait. Dean caught himself again. Dean Paul was still alive. This was 1972. Dean Paul wouldn't die until 1987, 15 years from now. But sometimes Dean felt like it had already happened, like the grief was already there, waiting. An ambulance arrived. Paramedics took over, worked on the man. But after a few minutes they stopped, looked at each other, shook their heads. One of them pulled a sheet over the man's face. Dean stood there, watching, his hands shaking, covered in blood. Not his blood, the dead man's blood. A police officer approached. "Sir, you need to move back." Dean didn't respond, just stared at the covered body. "Sir," the officer said again. "Dean?" Dean turned, looked at the officer, recognized the uniform but not the face. "You okay?" the officer asked. Dean nodded. "Didn't speak. You helped pull him out?" the officer asked. "Yeah," Dean said, his voice hoarse. "We tried." "You did what you could," the officer said. "Sometimes that's not enough." The officer took Dean's statement, asked questions, wrote things down. Dean answered mechanically, on autopilot. Then the officer said Dean could go. Dean walked back to his car, sat in the driver's seat, looked at his hands, still covered in blood, shaking. He tried to start the car. Couldn't. His hands wouldn't work, wouldn't grip the key, wouldn't turn it. He sat there, in his car, on the side of Highway 95, while emergency vehicles worked the scene behind him, while tow trucks hauled away the wreckage, while the covered body was loaded into an ambulance, While traffic started moving again, while the sun set, while the desert grew dark, Dean sat and couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't process what he'd just seen. A stranger, driving to wherever he was going, alive one moment, dead the next. Just like that, no warning, no preparation, no goodbye, gone. Finally, after maybe an hour, Dean started the car, drove, slowly, carefully, to Vegas, to the sands. He was late, very late. The show was supposed to start at 8 p.m. It was after 9 when Dean arrived. His manager was frantic. "Where have you been? We've been calling. The audience is waiting." The manager stopped, saw Dean's face, saw the blood on his hands, on his shirt. "What happened?" the manager asked, his voice changing. "Concerned now." "Accident," Dean said. "On the highway. Are you hurt?" "No," Dean said, "but someone died." The manager was quiet. "Then, do you need to cancel?" Dean shook his head. "No, I'll perform." "Dean, maybe you should." "I said I'll perform," Dean repeated, his voice hard. "Let me clean up. I'll go on." Dean went to his dressing room, washed his hands, changed his shirt, looked at himself in the mirror. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last 3 hours. But he straightened his tie, fixed his hair, put on the mask, the performance mask, the one he'd worn for 30 years, the one that made everything look easy, effortless, fun. Dean walked onto the stage at 9:27 p.m., an hour and a half late. The audience had waited, confused, concerned, but they were still there. Dean picked up the microphone, looked out at 1,300 people, opened his mouth to make a joke, to apologize for being late, to launch into his usual routine. But nothing came out. He stood there, silent. The audience waited, uncertain. Dean tried again, started to speak, but his voice cracked. He stopped, took a breath. "I'm sorry," Dean said finally, his voice quiet, "for being late. There was an accident on the highway. I stopped to help. Someone died." The audience was silent, shocked, not by the words, but by Dean's delivery. There was no joke, no lightness, no charm, just honesty, raw, painful, honest. "I've been doing this for a long time," Dean continued, "performing, making people laugh, making people forget their problems for a little while. And I'm good at it. I make it look easy. But tonight, I don't know if I can." The audience didn't know how to respond. This wasn't the Dean Martin they knew, the cool, the casual, the effortless. This was something else, someone else. "I saw a man die tonight," Dean said. "Tried to save him. Couldn't. And I keep thinking. He was going somewhere. Had plans. Maybe family waiting for him. Maybe a job. Maybe a show he wanted to see. And now, he's gone. Just like that." Dean looked down at his hands, still shaking slightly. "And I'm standing here," Dean continued, "about to sing songs, make jokes, pretend everything's fine. And I don't know how to do that, not tonight." The room was completely silent. Dean looked up. "I'm sorry," he said. "You paid to see a show, to have fun, to forget your problems, and I'm not giving you that. I can't, not tonight." Dean set down the microphone, started to walk off stage, but then someone in the audience spoke. A woman's voice, clear, carrying. "Just sing," she said. "You don't have to joke. You don't have to pretend. Just sing." Dean stopped, turned back. Other voices joined. "Yeah, just sing. We'll listen. Whatever you need. We're here." Dean stood there, looking at the audience. At 1,300 people, who'd waited an hour and a half, who could have left? Who could have demanded refunds, but who were still there, still willing to listen. "Okay," Dean said quietly, "okay." He walked back to the microphone, nodded to the band, and sang. But it was different, Everything was different. He didn't do his usual set list, the upbeat songs, the fun songs, the crowd pleasers. Instead, he sang Smile, a song about hiding pain, about putting on a brave face. His voice broke on the first verse. But he kept going. Then, Everybody Loves Somebody. But slower, sadder, like a lament instead of a celebration. Then Memories Are Made of This, and the lyrics, the words about memories, about time passing, about moments that can't be reclaimed. They hit different, meant something else, something heavier. Dean sang for 90 minutes. No jokes, no banter, no charm, just songs, raw, emotional, honest. The audience sat in silence, listening. Some were crying. Not because the performance was bad, but because it was real, because they were seeing something, someone they'd never seen before. When Dean finished, the applause was different too, not the usual raucous cheering, but quieter, respectful, moved. Dean didn't bow, didn't wave, just nodded, and walked off stage. After the show, Dean's manager found him in his dressing room. The manager started, then stopped. Didn't know how to finish. Different, Dean said. Yeah, the manager agreed. Is that okay? Dean asked. The manager nodded. Yeah, it's okay. The reviews the next day were mixed. Some critics didn't know what to make of it, called it subdued, off, not the Dean Martin they expected. Others understood, called it profound, moving, the most honest performance they'd ever seen. Dean performed for the next 13 nights. The rest of the residency, and every show was different, not like before, not the usual routine. He still joked occasionally, still had moments of lightness. But there was something else now, something underneath, a weight, an awareness, an honesty. He sang the same songs, but they meant different things, came from different places, reached different depths. Some people didn't like it, wanted the old Dean, the fun Dean, the easy Dean. But others connected with it, felt something, saw something real. After that residency, Dean never performed the same way again. Oh, he still did the jokes, the casual demeanor, the effortless charm. That was still there, but underneath, there was something else now. Something that came from that night, from seeing death, from being reminded that life is fragile, that moments matter, that pretending everything's fine isn't always honest. Years later, in 1987, when Dean Paul died, when the grief Dean had felt in advance finally arrived, for real this time, people who'd been at that show in 1972, who'd seen Dean perform after the accident, they understood. They recognized that Dean had been preparing, had been processing, had been learning how to perform through pain, how to be honest through entertainment, how to keep going when everything inside you wants to stop. April 3rd, 1972, the night Dean Martin witnessed a fatal car crash, the night he performed anyway, but never the same. That night changed him. Changed how he approached performance, changed what he gave audiences, changed what he asked of himself. He still entertained, still sang, still made people smile. But there was depth now, truth, reality. He didn't just make people forget their problems. He helped them feel their problems, process them, understand that pain is part of life, and you can acknowledge it, feel it, and still perform, still sing, still keep going. That's what Dean learned that night on Highway 95, that you don't have to pretend everything's fine, you don't have to put on a mask. You can be honest, be real, be hurt, and still show up, still do your job, still give people something, just something different, something true. And sometimes that's more valuable than all the jokes and charm in the world. Sometimes people need to see that it's okay to not be okay and still keep going. Dean Martin showed them that. Every performance, after April 3rd, 1972, until the day he stopped performing for good. That's legacy. Not the songs, not the success, but the moment when everything changed, when death reminded him of what matters, and he let it change him, let it deepen him, let it make him more human, more real, more honest, and in doing so, gave audiences something they'd never seen before, the real Dean Martin, not the mask, but the man underneath, carrying pain, carrying loss, carrying awareness, and still singing, still performing, still here. That's strength, that's courage, that's what it means to witness death and choose life, even when it's harder, even when it hurts, even when you can't pretend anymore.